All right, hello and welcome to another tutorial in Maya. Today we are going to take a look at how to create a displacement map so that you can have some nice looking terrain. In this case I just sort of modeled, it could either be icebergs, it could just be a landmass, but anyway, just created this with a displacement map in Photoshop. And generally, a displacement map is a really good way to create organic terrain, something with a little bit of variance, and it's sort of random. And generally you can get some mountains or some hills or whatever you want. Displacement maps are real flexible. So, anyway, that's what it'll get you. Something like this. I have a physical sun sky simulation going on here, and I have the ocean. And everything is at default right now, and I'm at mental ray production settings, so you may want to set yourself up for mental ray production. And that's pretty much it. So that's the scene. This is what we're creating, and we're going to do that in Photoshop. So let's take a look at how to do that in Photoshop. Now, you can do this in Maya with a crater, and it's a little bit different process, and there is a tutorial that covers doing the displacement map directly in Maya. But in this case, Photoshop gives us a couple more possibilities and a little bit more control over what we're doing with this displacement map, and it's really easy to do. So let me take you through the process. I'm going to show you sort of what I start out with. Here is that displacement map brought in, and I'm just on high quality viewport mode right here. And you can see you can see some of the faces and the tessellation going on here, and some of these don't look all that great in here. But once you start working with your textures and things, it'll start to look like this. This is just a simple Lambert with a fractal on the bump map. So really no big deal there, just a quick starting point. So anyway, that's that. So let's take a look inside of Photoshop. And but before we do that, let's also take a look at the famous Lester Banks. Lester's on the internet night and day, finding good stuff for your brain. He's got After Effects tutorials, Maya tutorials, I mean all sorts of stuff, and updated daily. The man does not sleep. He finds good CG stuff for your brain, and you should go check him out all the time. Bookmark him, so every day. So inside of Photoshop here, what we want to do is basically just create a file, and we're going to just create a new file, and I'm going to just maybe a 2048 by 2048 72 transparent background, and we'll just go with that. Okay, so we have this. So now let's just come up here into the filter, and we're going to come down and we're going to render. We're going to render some clouds. So go ahead and click on your clouds, and what we're going to do is go back to the filter, come down to render again, and we want some clouds, difference clouds. All right, now that gives us something that looks like this. Now you can press Command F on the keyboard and keep changing this up a bit. I'll just hit Command F a couple times, Command F, and I may want to stick with that. Just get something that's random. Right now it doesn't really matter. Let's just get a pattern to work with here. So that looks pretty good to me. So there it is. Now you'll notice that I'm on black on my foreground color, and I have a gray chosen for my background color. So at the moment, let's just leave it like that, and we'll work with this dodge tool a little bit, and let's pull on our dodge there. And in this case, let's just come over and sort of dodge out some stuff. I'm going to click on there, and anything that turns out white is going to have a higher value. So that means this will form a peak. So anything in here that's sort of white will form the peaking areas, and anything that's black will be sort of like the floor or the ground plane. So with that in mind, let's take this and let's convert this now into a 3D mesh. So in the 3D menu setup here, if you come down to New Mesh from Grayscale and just create plane, I'm going to go ahead and do that. It'll calculate for a second or two here, and then it'll create basically a mesh. Boom, just like what you see there. And if you hit K on the keyboard, it'll come up with your tool so that you can rotate around, And let's just take a look at that. I'm going to click in here, and there we go. All right. So that sort of gives us a starting point and seeing kind of what those black and white values do. Now you'll notice that my other image kind of went away for the moment. That doesn't mean it's gone. It's down here underneath your layer 1 depth, and that's your depth map. So if you double click on this, that'll bring us up with our depth map. So now I have basically 2 images here, but I want to see both of them together as I do this. So in this case, I may want to go to my window and go to arrange, and I want to go to tile. So basically that gives me this one over here and this one over here. So let's do a quick update. This looks a little jagged. It's a little spiky, and the way we mellow that out a bit is to go ahead and just maybe soften it by adding some blur. So in the displacement map over here, let's get our choose tool. Let's choose this displacement map and come up into our filter, and we'll come down to our blur, and let's do a Gaussian blur. And you'll notice right away that it added just a little bit of blur there to the pixels. I might bring that up just a little bit more. Everything is going to be different, you know, so you might want to play around with various depth maps at various blur settings to see kind of what you get. But I'm going to bring that up to have it soften up a bit, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, I just made a change to this image over here, but it hasn't updated yet to my 3D mesh over here. So I have to save this image. So you could go to your file, save, or hit Command S. And when you hit Command S, it's going to come over and make those changes and save them out and apply them, and we'll see what happens to our model over here. Okay, so that kind of helped out a bit. It softened them up and, you know, kind of made them look like they do. Well, what I want to do now is maybe play around with some values. Remember that if we're in our 3D mesh model over here, hit K on the keyboard. That'll bring up your rotation tool. And just sort of click in there and check out and see what's going on first. I'm going to maybe bring down the scale of this a little bit. Remember, you can play around with your scale just through your Y value over here by clicking on that little guy right there and playing around with your Y value. So, you know, you can bring it down smaller, larger, whatever. So I'll stay with that for the moment. And remember, anything that's black is going to be kind of lower to the ground plane down here. So over here, I can kind of see where my spiky stuff is. And I may want to, well, there's a number of different ways to do this. I can stay with my black there. I could go to my, my dodge tool and look at the midtones and see that the exposure is 100%. That's cool. Well, I'll come over into this image and just sort of like, I'll just sort of dodge. Well, actually, we want to add black. So in this case, let's bring this center section up a little bit more by creating some white tones in the middle. So what I'll do is just sort of come in here, and you'll notice that it's not doing much because it's really just affecting the midtones, and you know, we want it to really, you know, paint some white areas on here to bring this overall level up in here. So in this case, I might want to go back to my defaults right here and maybe go to my white on my foreground and just start painting in some white right here. I might want to switch over to a brush, and there we go. So now we'll sort of paint in the center line there. And I'm going to hit Command S again, and we'll kind of see what happens when we add a little bit more density to the middle here. Okay, so you can kind of see what the effect it has when you do an extreme value. It kind of translates to something that looks like that. Well, that's cool and everything, but let me go back and maybe paint in some black area around here to kind of bring some of this stuff down. So I'll go through here and maybe just, you know, taper off my edges a little bit. We'll make it kind of circular, I guess. All right, and let's go with that. I'll hit Command S, and we'll watch this update. And that's about as easy as it gets, creating these displacement maps in Photoshop. So now you can see where I've kind of, you know, lost a little bit of that. which is cool. I think I'll go with this. So in this case, you might want to actively choose your image over here. And I'm going to just do a save. So we'll go to File, and I'm going to save that image as, well, let's see. I'll save it to my main folder here. It's always good to put stuff in your main default images folder. And I'll go into my images there, and I'm going to name it D7. So we'll go up here, and I'm going to call that D7. And I'm going to also switch that up to a TIFF. So in this case, I'll just save it as a TIFF without the layers. You don't need layers in here. So that's what we're looking at, D7 TIFF. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And there it is. Everything's looking good. And now we can leave Photoshop. So we'll just minimize Photoshop and come back into Maya. And in this case, I'll just, we'll just save this project. Actually, no, I want to make sure we're active in Maya. And we'll go to File. And I think I'll just do a new scene. And in this case, I don't need to save that. And here we go. So let's create a plane real quick to drop this displacement map onto. So we'll go to Create Polygon Plane, and I think I'll just roll that out there like that. And let's take a look at this plane's shape. So the width, let's do the width at 24 and the height at 24, and I'll just leave my subdivisions at 50 and 50. That should work okay for now. All right, we're almost there. Now we need to get into the hypershade, and we need to create a material for that displacement map to rest on. So if you come up into your blend here, just click on your blend, get yourself a blend, and right away it's a good idea to come over here and do a graph and graph input output connections, because that enables this little node to show up, which we need to have, because we're going to attach our displacement map directly to this base of this shading group. So that's cool. We're almost there. Let's go to displacement, click on displacement, and now we have this displacement node right here. And what we can do is just middle mouse button, drag and drop it on top of there, and the default, and you can see where it made its connection. Now all we have to do now at this point is look at our displacement attributes over here, and we'll click on this little checkerboard, and let's choose a 2D texture file, and we'll come up here and click on the folder, and in this case I want to try this D7 TIFF. Okay, so I'm going to go open. So technically I'm all hooked up here. Let's see if I can roll this out a little bit, and everything's looking good. All right, let me get rid of this hypershade for a second. I'm going to come down here onto my plane, maybe go into shaded mode, and in this case I'm going to click on that plane, come down, assign existing material, and that's the blend 1. All right, well, let's try a quick render and see what happens. I'm going to just click on this render over here. And sometimes it takes a little while for it to do its thing, and there it is. Okay, so essentially I have you know, the displacement map is in there, but really I don't have the values up and down. I mean, this is not like it showed up in Photoshop. This was a lot taller, and I maybe had a little bit of relief going down here. So the first thing to do is let's take a look at, let's see here, let me see if I can move that out of the way, and we'll go into our let's see here, let's come back over here into our nodes, and let's look at this displacement node first. You'll notice that it has its displacement and it has that file attached. If you click on this file and come down here, you have some various choices. You know, sometimes your displacement map when you're first starting out, maybe if you choose alpha is luminance, sometimes it's not going to show up, sometimes it does. My program's a little buggy, and I don't know. Sometimes by having the alpha is luminance checked, actually brings it in. And it's more of a mental ray thing, because if we didn't have this checked and we were, say, in mental ray, I'm going to go ahead and switch over into mental ray. And I'm going to go ahead and let's get our preferences for mental ray set up here. I'm just going to come in here into its quality, and we'll up it to just default production quality. There we go. And we'll go to default production. And notice that this alpha as luminance is unchecked. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick render. And there it is. See, it's not showing up. And, basically that's because we're in mental ray, and, essentially we do need alpha is luminance checked if we're working in mental ray and we're working with this type of displacement map. So there it is. Just something to be aware of. You have to look at whether you're on Maya or mental ray and check out your alpha is luminance thing. All right. Okay, so now we're kind of set, but I want to see a little bit more height and depth here. So if I go over here to the alpha gain, and it's at 1 right now, meaning that it basically is just 1 unit up from the surface, but I want to increase that to, like, say maybe 4. And I'm going to do the alpha offset to, say, like a -4. That way I'll get some stuff going up and I'll get some stuff going down. All right, so let's do another quick render and take a look at what happens. All right, dramatic difference. So you can see we're playing with these two values in the positive and the offset in the negative. You start to get a little bit more, drama going on in there. So that's okay. I'll stay with this for the moment, and maybe real quick, like I might come over into my indirect lighting and just do a create. Mine, there's a tutorial on this MIA exposure photographic node, and so go through that tutorial and install that little script and you'll get this window. Anyway, there we go. So now I have my physical sun and sky attached, and if I look in my hypershade, I think what I could do here is just come over here into my MIA and click on that. I usually start out with mine from default. I usually set this at like F8, and my gamma, I kind of put my gamma at 1.8 because it gives me a much better look. And burn highlights, might take the burn highlights up a little bit, and might increase my saturation up to about 1.5 or something like that. And there we go. So now I can do a quick render and we'll see what we get. Let's come over here and maybe get a little bit more interesting angle. I'm going to bring it in there, and I'm going to drop it down here like this. And let's see, I'm going to do a quick render. And remember, working with these displacement maps in the beginning can be kind of taxing, just depending on, how many segments your overall plane is right here. And as you can see, it's sort of not really what we want right at the moment, but we're going to work with that. So I'm going to bring this over here a little bit, and actually I'm going to click on this plane now, and you'll notice that you don't see the displacement on the plane here because it just shows in a render. So you have to actually render that out to see what you're getting. So that's what I'm getting. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and convert this to polygons, and then that way we'll have a nice clean mesh. We can actually visualize what's happening here. So activate your plane, and you want to come up to modify and come down to convert and go over to your displacement to polygons option. And it'll take a second or two, and it'll do some mental calculations. And there it is. So it made the mesh, and the mesh is underneath this plane. So I'll go ahead and bring it up. But you can see by adding negative values in there how it sort of has some stuff that's kind of underneath the surface. So if this was water, you would see lots of little submerged rocks and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. I'll go ahead and just bring this up here for the moment all the way on top of the grid, and let's get in here a little closer and maybe take a little bit different angle like that. And we'll do another quick render, see what happens. Quick rendering. I like that word. It's a good theory, quick rendering. Well, anyway, this stuff is taxing at best to begin with, so there we go. Okay, so let's say I like that. I'll stay with that. We could do a couple of things. I could make some adjustments on my. Could make some adjustments on the overall sky adjustments. I might want to actually choose my physical sky right there and bring my horizon blur to maybe like, I don't know, maybe bring it to 1 or something like that. I don't know, you get the idea. Let's do another quick render. Well, no, yeah, we'll do quick render and see what happens with a little blur there. And then, of course, to start seeing the shadows and the definition in this displacement map, we would like to probably, change the angle of the sun a little bit. So we'll do that next. All right, that looks pretty good there. Let's see if we can find our sun. Where's our sun? Here's our sun shape, and let's see if I can get here over here. Let's take our sun direction, move that out of the way, and I think I'll just move the sun up here so we can see what it's doing first of all, and then maybe rotate it. We'll give it a rotation of something like that. All right, now that should dramatically start changing things as far as the look of the sky and everything else, and it'll sort of get you started. Now remember, this is sort of just a starting point, and then there's all the texturing and things that will go along with that. And you'll notice that when you start off here, you'll see a lot of little artifacts and stuff. They kind of look, I don't know, they don't look natural. I mean, right now this is just a normal Lambert material on there, so what you're seeing are just sort of faces that are sort of odd, but it's not really a worry. But there's something to be aware of when you're using your mental ray settings here. You can come up into the window, and there's a little thing in the rendering editors under mental ray that's called the approximation editor, and this is really sort of a tutorial for another day. But what the approximation editor is it helps you get a better look from your displacement map. It sort of is it's a whole tutorial in and of itself. So I don't want to get into that, but I just want you to be aware of the fact that there's lots of ways that you can come in here and sort of start tweaking your mesh to make it look a lot smoother and whatnot. And this is really the key to getting to that point. But I'm really going to leave this out for the moment because there's a lot involved, and you have to do some various testing, and it's computationally expensive. It takes a long time when you start doing some test renders and whatnot. So really, it's a matter of starting small and working your way up into a really good look. So I think that's about it. Kind of went through that kind of fast, but I think you get the idea. It's a really cool thing to do to create organic terrain, and it's a little bit more, I like doing it better this way than actually doing it from inside of Maya with the creator method. So anyway, there you go. I hope you learned something, and as always, read a book. Learn something, would you? And don't forget to be a good person. And thanks for watching, and can't wait for the next one. So there you go.